Steampunk Trilogy, which was the first the first book ever to use steampunk as a hook. Well, in the title anyhow. But anyhow, I'm just here and happy to be here so that I can talk to Tim and elicit some exciting stuff about his new projects and maybe some anecdotes extending even beyond karaoke night. We'll see what he wants to contribute.
It's my only anecdote.
Yeah. But in any case, Tim, the ostensible remit of this panel is 3 or 4 great new projects that Tim has underway. Do you want to kick off with any particular one, or
whatever you want?
Yeah. All right.
And we can definitely. I mean, we can talk about the current stuff, but if you guys want any of the old stuff,
sure,
whatever,
exactly.
you ask questions or ask advice, because I've done everything wrong you can do in comics, so I know how to do everything more right now. So important. I can also, answer questions and
important stuff. Yeah, well, I'm thinking, maybe about the halfway point, we'll open the floor to questions. All right, I can't resist Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
I was in high school circa 1971, and Alice Cooper was like the first live act I ever saw.
Oh,
so
really?
So this is a cosmic or a karmic connection here. That
he's here.
Get out. He's at the convention? Oh, I totally did not.
Well, he's not at the convention yet, but he's playing the Mohegan Sun tomorrow night.
That's pretty wild.
Motley Crue. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
So I was told he was going to stop by my booth so I could talk to him because I'm working on that comic, which I'd probably make my pants. I would be excited. Yeah.
So Alice Cooper has somehow become kind of a superhero in his own franchise.
Yeah, well, so Alice Cooper in the 70s, a lot of you are probably pretty young, so you may not be familiar with Alice Cooper, but Alice Cooper was like the original shock rocker, and he sort of developed the things right around the same time as Kiss and all that stuff to sort of dress up and make costumes, and to just add the danger to rock and roll, like to sort of imply that there wasn't demons involved and everything, which makes people like it even more.
Yeah.
So he had a comic in the 70s, which was sort of like a take on Tales from the Dark Side sort of thing, where Alice was in a hi guys where Alice was in an insane asylum. So we're doing the an Alice Cooper versus Chaos Comics crossover. Yeah, which Chaos Comics is from the 90s, like a horror comics line. So it made sense to combine the two most heavy metal things in comics into one super heavy metal comic.
Now, is Alice Cooper our hero, our protagonist? He's kind of on the forces of good.
He's. I mean, in the comic story, and kind of going along with Alice's whole shtick, is he's the Lord of Nightmares. So in our story, someone is producing canned nightmares, and Alice is trying to stop them from selling his canned nightmares, and that involves the Chaos characters, and I made sure to make a reference to Wayne's World because he plays in Milwaukee, just for the hell of it. But so it's just like I tend to get hired to do a lot of horror comic stuff, which is totally fine by me. But getting to combine it with Alice Cooper is just sort of a weird. It's like one of those things you can't turn down.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a phenomenal thing. So this is a mini series. It's got a whole arc to it, and potentially, if it does well, who knows? Maybe even further installments.
Yeah, and I think Alice Cooper as a comic book character has such a storied tradition that sort of it's pretty much there will always be Alice Cooper type characters and stuff that we can because he reinvents himself all the time. So there's always new versions of Alice in comics.
Now let me ask: are you drawing? Are you? Both Marvel and DC have delved obviously into this whole realm of characters who inspire nightmares and control nightmares and stuff. Are you doing any little homages or riffing on that, or being inspired by those people? Like I'm thinking, is it Mephisto in Marvel who can send nightmares and stuff like that? Are you is any of that playing into your current scenario?
I mean, I grew up on the the 70s Marvel comics that my dad used to buy them.
Yeah.
So I can't help but sort of, he would buy them and he'd feel kind of ashamed that he still had comic books, so he'd give them to us. They were we were 7 and they were terrifying. So kind of it would just screw me up and give me bad dreams and stuff. But I loved it. Like I like being creeped out. So yeah, there's a little bit of that sort of trickling in there.
And you've obviously got the whole Freddy Krueger thing. You know, that's a touchstone for people.
Well, I use it for Hack Slash when we did like the dream. I always end up doing some kind of dream killer guy. There's always somehow that became part of my job. It's weird. I don't know why.
So this is just one iron in the fire for you now. You've got your ongoing series Revival. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? I'm not, as I think I told you online, I'm not up to speed on it. Do you have like a whole narrative arc planned out that's going to culminate, or is it just is it open ended at this point? Or
so Revival,
tell the folks exactly what. Yeah,
it's my Image comic. It's a story about a small town in Wisconsin where. One day, a bunch of people come back from the dead, but they're not zombies. They're just not quite right. And the town is under quarantine because the government is concerned that people will spread immortality, because that would be bad for business. So it's a crime story set in a small town when one of the cops has to solve the murder of her sister, but her sister is still around because she came back. So it's set in my hometown. I decided I want to do a horror story set in the town I grew up in, which is snowy, for 6 months of the year, it's a snowy wasteland, and so I kind of want to set it in that, and it's, typical American small town, so it has its things that are really great about it, and then it has some things that are not so great about it. So I try to combine all that, and it's an Image comic. It's been going for, I think we're on issue 34, and the series is going to go up to issue 48, and then it ends with a big, big scary ending.
Are you? I read recently that. Saga, the ending on that is known, but he hasn't even revealed it to the artist yet. Is it Fiona Staples? I think it's the artist. Yeah, she doesn't even know. She's drawing it, but he refuses to tell her what the ending is. Are you keeping yours top secret? How many folks know it? No,
my artist knows it.
Yeah, he hasn't. He hasn't. Well, Brian Bourne hasn't told Fiona Staples yet what the ending is.
That's because he doesn't know. He's lying. He's lying.
That's quite possible. So you're having those two titles, obviously horror heavy comics, a mode that you like to work in. Do you have any favorite prose artists, prose writers who obviously from Stephen King on down, who inspires you in the book field for horror?
I mean, admittedly, I don't read a lot of them. I watched a lot of horror movies as a kid.
Sure.
And I've read all the Lovecraft books.
Oh well, right there you've got influence number one. But
I've never read a Stephen King book in my life. I've never read a Clive Barker book.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's good in a way. It's good because there's always the so-called anxiety of influence where you read these masters and get hung up. Oh, everything's been done, and sometimes it's good to just take a blank slate and put your own spin.
Well, one of the bummers of writing full time is most of my time, if I get to read something for fun, it's not for fun. I do research,
Sure.
So I'm always reading like crime books and like stuff that's not, it's like facts. I'm like learning. I'm studying basically. My fun is now studying because my job is fun.
Yeah.
So I'm the opposite. Like I have to do studying for entertainment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, research as a writer, I can also testify. Research chews up an incredible amount of time, and you have to be careful not to let it overwhelm you, I think. Okay, so moving away from the horror, you're also currently scripting the Grayson series. We need to know about that because that's an exciting new direction. This is a DC comic that features Dick Grayson, Once Upon a Time, Robin, and later on Nightwing. And now, tell us about Grayson now.
So DC did a big crossover called Forever Evil. And in that story, poor Dick Grayson got outed if they took his mask off, showed who he was to the world, and then they killed him. But then they called me and said, okay, we didn't really kill him, but he can't be Nightwing anymore because he's been revealed to the world. So what would you do with him if he was a spy? I was like, what? That's a weird idea, but that they kind of wanted to play around with a genre other than just because Nightwing is kind of like. It's Batman light, and they had a lot of Batman stuff, so it's like, how do we do something different with them? So I came up with a weird idea where he's, works for this organization called Spiral, which is this thing made up by the writer Grant Morrison, and they were like basically a spy organization that was so far undercover they weren't even really sure which side they were on. So we kind of just played around with that, and so Dick became an agent of that as a sort of double agent for Batman. But basically, it's just an excuse for us to do like crazy globe-hopping action stories with Dick Grayson, and play around with like the sort of all the cool stuff about that character, but not have to worry about logging him into all the Gotham City stuff. And it's a chance for him to kind of shine on his own. And Dick's like a really different guy than Batman, so though he can do Batman kind of stuff, he's the cool, sexy, fun guy. Like he's not. Like Dick doesn't stand on rooftops and cry in the rain. It's just that's not how he rolls, And so him being sort of this, we like to play him as like Dick kind of thinks of himself because he's a trapeze artist. It's sort of like he's the net for everyone who's got, something bad happening to him, he'll catch you. So he's sort of using that position in Spiral to do good, even though Spiral is kind of.
Yeah, I did just, I happened to read the Batgirl annual that was out a week or two ago, and he has a guest appearance, and that's very much the way you describe it. He's kind of, he's in the background secretly helping Batgirl. He can't even reveal that he's alive, and it's very effective. I thought it was, I know you didn't script that one, but it was, I thought it was an effective appearance for him. Well, DC has always had, just like Marvel, kind of a subtext of certain spy organizations, and so I think that fits in nice to the continuity. Any plans for intersecting him with some of his old teammates like Teen Titans?
Yeah, we're doing a book called Batman and Robin Eternal, which is a weekly book that starts in October. And the story on that one is sort of Dick having to come back to Gotham because there's a weird mystery involving the Robin. So it's a book that's weekly, so it has 5 writers on it, 6 writers. It has a lot of writers on it because doing a book weekly is really hard. But Dick is sort of the star of that book, and you get to see him team up with Red Hood and Batgirl and Tim Drake and Cassie, the old Batgirl from the previous and Spoiler and a bunch of other characters, and it's a big fun sort of like a conspiracy story. Like we're doing like our North by Northwest, like big spy, running around the world action story with Dick, so it's pretty cool.
So this is DC's new week. They don't have a weekly currently, do they? I think
this is the next one.
This is the next one. Mm-hmm. Good. Those have done pretty well, I think, for that. For both
Batman Eternal did really well, and it was really fun to work on. So it's it's a couple of the same writers from that, James Tynion, Scott Snyder, me, and then it's also Genevieve Valentine, who writes Catwoman, and Steve Orlando, who writes Midnighter, and 2 new guys, Colin Lansing and Jackson. I'm gonna screw up there, but they're two. Yeah, they wrote the Hacktivist comic. So. But we all like get to jam together. Like it's a team. It's like a TV show. We all sit in a room and come up with a bunch of ideas and then write it to set.
So there's a good level of coordination involved before the scripts even get done. Do you guys have like the writers' retreat?
Yep.
And things get thrashed out there.
Yep. We go sit in the DC offices and the new California digs and sit for 2 days for like 12 hours a day and try to think of Batman shit and just then you realize that you're basically like when you were a kid playing with action figures with a bunch of other adults. So, but yeah, it's a.
What's the vibe in the new California offices? I mean, is it you obviously crossed the transition there? You worked out of the New York offices and stuff. Does it feel like home? I mean, did they?
I mean, it's weird because I'm not used to working in an office.
Right.
So when I go to the office, I sweat and I'm nervous. Like I don't want to go to the bathroom because I don't want to see anybody see me go to the bathroom. It's weird. It's like all of a sudden I turn into this neurotic weirdo because I'm like not used to. I work at home or I have a studio with a bunch of friends, so it's like so weird to go to the DC offices and know that there's all these corporate people walking around and stuff, and I'm just not. It's weird. Very weird.
Yeah. But is it kind of, do you get a West Coast vibe? I mean, are there surfboards stacked in the cubicle for
it's super
lunch
LA.
break or
I mean, the New York office was right across the street from the David Letterman show, so it was like so New York. When you were to that, you'd see the people lining up, and you were walking around New York City, and there was places to go. And then in LA, the new office is in the middle of nowhere, and there's nowhere to walk to. And
It's like an office park
it's
type thing.
The closest thing is the Warner Brothers lot.
Yeah.
So like, it's cool,
Yeah.
but it's super
Right, totally different vibe. Now, Tim, you are an artist as well, right? So what is the art currently taking a back seat to the writing, or how do you feel about that? Is it are you getting a little itchy to get a pencil in your hand again? Or,
well, and the nice thing is I go to cons. That's where I draw. So I just do sketches. That's kind of my drawing time.
Yeah.
And then that'll keep me hopefully fresh enough that when I draw again, I'll still be able to do it, because that stuff goes away really fast.
Sure.
Drawing is not like bicycle rides. Like you forget everything. It's weird. I still do some covers and stuff. But I can draw one book a month and write one at the same time. But I can't draw one book and write two. So as soon as I have two books, I have to get two more writing gigs. Yeah, because I can't draw one. So that's why it looks like my name's on everything, because I need to get a bunch of to make up for not drawing. So.
Sure. Now I know our panel description has a fourth component. We've got Revival, Alice Cooper, Grayson. Remind me quick before I have to. Blade. Okay, a character dear to the hearts of many. So you're doing work for both Marvel and DC now. And Blade is your property at Marvel right now, or okay. So now are you? Did I remember correctly that Blade has a daughter now?
Yeah. Well, so I did this book for like 12 years called Hack Slash at Image Comics, and it was like my homage to B horror movies and stuff. And it featured this girl and her partner who traveled around and killed monsters, like slashers, like 80s movie slashers. So when Marvel was trying to think of something to do with Blade, they're like, oh, Seeley kind of knows how to do that crap. So they asked me to pitch a Blade story, and I pitched the idea that the only thing I don't like about Blade is he just doesn't give a shit about anything. Like, he kills vampires, that's it. Like, that's Blade's shtick. So I thought it would be interesting if, like, suddenly this badass guy had to drag around a 4-year-old. I thought it would be really funny, like a little kid, So I pitched that to Marvel, and they liked it, and then they went, you know what? People really like Kamala Khan, the new Miss Marvel. Like, she's 16. There's all these teenage girls that love that comic. Make Blade's daughter 16-year-old. Like, oh my god. Yeah. So I had to change the story, which was fine because it worked out better. But so the story now is sort of the same one I had, but she's a stubborn-ass teenager because she's part Blade. He's stubborn as hell. So, so it's kind of a team up. He has to. There's basically there's a reason that he has a daughter and he doesn't remember, and that's kind of the mystery of the story, because, you've read the comics and you've never seen him have a kid, you're like, what the hell? Yeah. There's a reason for that, and that's kind of the hook of the story, is how did Blade not know he had a kid? But it involves, like, I thought the first arc, you've seen Blade stab vampires in the head like a million times, so he doesn't fight any vampires right away. He fights a whole bunch of crazy stuff. And also I think vampires sort of aren't as scary as they used to be because everybody knows the rules of vampires, So I thought I'd make up some stuff that you have no idea what the rules are, and also Blade doesn't. So so kind of big fun crazy monster. Monster.
Well, a couple of things spinning off that. It seems to me that the teenage character has a lot more plot potential than just the toddler or the younger one. So I think that was probably a wise move to get that character to the point where they actually have kind of agency in the story and can do stuff.
I was just worried about it being too much like Buffy or Hack Slash, but they were like, don't worry about it. So, I don't care. I mean, it's a good story.
Sure. Now, if Blade is someone I've only dipped into now and again, but do I recall correctly that he's part vampire himself, or is he half vampire, half human? What's the daughter's status? Is she? That's the secret. Okay. So we have to read to find out. Any chance of how does Blade's always been a little self-contained apart from the Marvel universe, and is there going to be a lot of interaction? I mean, are we going to have sort of guest appearances by other characters, or is there a superhero angle to it, or
eventually? But I think that there's a reason. Like, Marvel's sort of horror comic universe is always kind of on its own.
So Dr. Morbius crops up a lot in Spider-Man and so on.
Yeah, but at least for the first 5 or 6 issues, it's all
self-contained kind
Yeah,
of.
and then we'll put, like, we have to put, because there's the new Wolverine is Wolverine's clone, so I'm like, we gotta have Blade's daughter fight Wolverine's clone.
That sounds like a matchup.
Yeah, so,
a matchup made in heaven.
But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like, when you're doing the sort of big universe stuff, it's so hard not to want to play with all the toys.
Sure,
because they're available,
sure.
So, yeah, it's hard for me not to be like, and then Spider-Man swings by, I'm like, nope, don't do that. So, yeah.
So really, you're talking about it. Are you doing like 4 books a month now? Without the yeah. That's a goodly workload. I mean, do you ever kind of burn the midnight oil, or feel it's deadlines creep up on you and?
Well, so for comic book writers, like, you don't. I'm sure you're surprised to find this out. You don't make a ton of money, so you can't just have like one job. You have to have a few, but it depends. I think some writers, I know, like Cullen Bunn can write a script in 3 days, which I cannot do.
No.
It takes me about a week usually to write a script. So
for a single book, for like a 22-page book.
Yeah, so I usually have to take like 5 to 6 days. So I try to schedule it so that I do like 4.5 books a month. I consider Grayson a half book because I have a co-writer that we flip issues with Tom King. So that's kind of how I manage my insane schedule. But I can do it if I just say, on Monday I start Blade, and that's the only book I work on this week is Blade. Because if I work on Blade and Revival at the same time, it's not good.
I personally myself, I'm kind of a single track guy, one project at a time until that's done. Yeah,
it's too. I mean, all the books I do kind of have a different vibe. So if I mess vibes up,
right, your head's in one space, your head's in one universe, and to jump tracks to another universe is kind of disorienting.
Yeah, and Revival's kind of quiet, like crime story. It's very sort of Twin Peaksy weird, and then obviously like doing a hack slash thing is like all boobs and butts and blood and stuff. So it's a totally different sort of thing. Yeah.
Now, Revival. I don't know if that the detective you mentioned, the female detective, is the total protagonist or the main protagonist, but she's obviously a huge part. What's your take on writing female protagonists and getting them more up front and just you find it something congenial? Do you ever reach a point where you're at sea a little bit, or what's your feedback? Have you gotten good feedback? Like, we really like this woman.
Well, just generally speaking, I don't know what it says about me, but for some reason, I generally choose to write female leads. I don't know why, but I always have.
Blade's daughter, obviously.
Yeah, going back to Hack Slash, which was like the first project I sort of did all by myself. And I'm not sure why. I think generally I just find women more interesting, not just in the way that I also like to look at them, which is just the boring straight guy part, but also just sort of out of, I don't know, sort of, I'm not sure exactly, but
maybe some emotional resonance or some different plot possibilities that wouldn't be open to your typical male superhero.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of white guys in comics. So like, at least in superhero comics, and there's typically been an abundance of dudes. So I think one of the things I thought I'd do is like, well, if I make up a new book, I won't have it star dude, just because
you could impulse.
So, but I never even thought that it would be weird for a guy to write women. I don't know why, but I've never had anybody say you don't get women right. I've never.
Good. Well, that's good.
That.
Well, ideally, if you go back to classical literature, you have Flaubert's famous statement. This might be the only time Flaubert has been invoked at a comics convention.
Probably.
I think that's what I bring here from the from the literary world. Flaubert saying, "Madame Bovary, c'est moi." I am Madame Bovary. So that's the identification you need to have.
C'est moi. There you
go. So, these things are obviously keeping you busy. But yet is your mind speculating on future projects, or are you pitching anything to the big companies, or?
That's the other. So, because in the last 2 years, I made that transition from being the guy who draws to the guy who writes, and I found out when you write stuff, you have to be pitching shit constantly. Like, your job is to be like, hey, what are you guys doing with with Hawk and Dove over there at DC.
Yeah.
Like, you have to constantly be coming up with new ideas. And that's a challenge, but right now, like, I'll go through periods where I'm just like throwing out pitches, like, I got an idea for this guy, I got an idea for this character. So yeah, I'm always pitching stuff. I'm working on I need to sit down and make up a new creator-owned thing. Like, I need to do a new Image book is what I need to do. So I'm trying to come up with the thing that'll keep me interested for 2 or 3 years. So Revival, once we came up, it was like, yep, that'll keep me busy and interested for the next
48 issues of had a 4-year, nice 4-year.
I knew I would be interested in 4 years. And I'm trying to figure out something now that I'll be interested in for, at least.
Now, now Image being a creator-owned, you generally come on board with kind of a full package already. You have an artist on with you, so what's your scheme for like working with artists, scouting out talent, people you'd like to work with? You like extend little feelers here and there, like would you like to work with me on this project? Does it appeal to you?
I mean, I have a studio where I work with the comic book artist Mike Norton is about 8 feet from me, and the cover artist Jenny Frizen, who does the Revival covers, is about 3 feet from me. And Chris Burnham, who used to draw Batman Incorporated, used to sit across the other way. So I can just studio
nice.
mates.
So
I
you
can
got
just
a whole
turn around and be like,
network,
"You guys want to do this book?" But yeah, I mean, I live in Chicago, and there's a lot of comic book artists there, and we all hang out because we're lonely people, and so mostly I work with my friends. The guy when I worked with Stefano Caselli on Hack Slash. He was in Italy, and I had never even met him, but every time we talked on email, we got along really well. So we made up Hack Slash together. But usually I just try to pick friends,
Sure. So because you are going to be working with these folks for 4 or 5 years,
and you will drive each other crazy. So if you can have a
understanding companion.
Because you will hate each other at some point, probably multiple points. But if you have a good relationship before that, then at least you have something to start from. When you're trying to think of really potent insults, at least you know their history. You can really get one in there. So
now the Image model, as I understand it, is there's no real upfront money. It's all in the potential in your sales and the marketing of it.
The back end, we call it.
So right. So you have to kind of have a little lifeline while you're putting this Image bundle together to support yourself before you can even launch the creator-owned thing. So this is where the businessman aspect of everything. I mean, you're not just a creative talent, drawing and writing. You actually have to put your accountant's cap on and say, how can we fund this? And
I can't believe how much of my job is business. Because I hate business.
Yes.
I hate counting money, but that's one thing interesting I think about doing this sort of modern comic book creator-owned stuff is that you have to be good at balancing your budget, and part of my job is writing paychecks. That's what I do. That's a weird part of my job. But I do that. I have
publicizing, doing all the publicity,
marketing, and I do advertising and all this stuff that when I was a kid, you'd see Spawn come out. I just assumed all Todd McFarlane had to do was draw tiny little details and monsters, and he was good. It's like, nope, all this business stuff is part of the job. So I'm kind of glad that that when I originally let another company, when Devil's Due was doing Hack Slash, I let them do it, and I was so happy not to have to do the business stuff. But I'm glad, even though I hate most of it, I'm glad I do it all myself now, because I can't blame anybody but me if I screw it up. And it's also huge education into how things work. All things.
Sure.
So definitely education. I would always totally recommend people who do their own self-publishing, take care of all that shit yourself, at least for the first couple of years.
Well, talking earlier today with Greg Pak, he's gone the Kickstarter route, and that's another whole set of responsibilities and headaches and options and so on. Have you ever considered Kickstarter? Has that been something?
I did.
You
one.
did one?
I won't do it again, probably.
No.
I mean, maybe, but to me, that's a whole bucket of work, because that's the part of it's all promotion. It's all
getting people on board, fulfilling the orders. And
the part of Kickstarter I totally didn't like, it's kind of funny, but it's the part I hate, is that people in some of the older generations do not understand what a Kickstarter is. So when I did a Kickstarter, I had my aunt calling me and be like, "Did you need some money or something?" and I just didn't. I felt weird about it. Like when I was like I was trying to use it as a pre-order system, which I think what you should do with Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's the theoretical.
That's the
aspect
theory, but it looks like you're begging for money, and I don't know if it's because I grew up in the Midwest or something, but that bothers me. And then the part where my relatives just didn't get it, like I'd see my Kickstarter thing would be like, "Here's $100 from your grandma." I'm like, "No, grandma." I know grandma doesn't want that book. She's just, so. Yeah, that part of it I probably wouldn't do again. I like the more of the. I like to throw the shit out there and see if it sticks. Like that. I don't know. That's kind of my. That's how I grew. I started with Image, and that's worked for me. So I guess I'm the see if shit sticks guy.
It looks to me like we're about at the halfway point here. Maybe we should amenable to some questions.
Discuss,
Any the wide range of Tim's work, or anything even laterally adjacent to it here. Any questions? Yeah, the gentleman right here.
I'm wondering how you initially got into the comic book industry.
Always interesting.
And also, how long did it take you to get the format down? Like getting a story in one comic, getting a story in three in an arc. How long did it take you? Yeah. How long did it take you to get that whole?
Well, so I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere. It's the town in Revival, actually, and I was just like a bored kid in the woods with nothing to do. So I read comics and made comics all through my childhood. And I did a report on the career day when I was in second grade, and I did it about being a comic book artist. And I wrote a letter to Marvel, and they sent me this weird. I can't believe they sent me how royalties work. They explained to a 10-year-old, which is amazing. So I always knew I wanted to do that, and I guess I never had any other career aspirations. But then when I was 19, I started. So actually, it was younger than that. Like 15 or 16, I would publish my own comics at the local print shop, and they were terrible. But I would print up like 300 of them. I would save up money from my lawn mowing job, and then I would print up like 300 comics, and then I would go to cons and sell them. I can't believe nobody bought them, but they did. And it used to be like you could get a table at a Chicago Comic Con, which was like, it was about 4 hours from my house. I could drive to Chicago. You could get a table for like $100. So I would save up from my Burger King money, go to the show, sit with my crappy comics, and sell them.
That takes a lot of initiative, though. I mean, that's not, for all the 10-year-olds and 19-year-olds who have aspirations, the percentage that actually follow them through, that's that's not common, Tim. So, are those early mini comics worth a lot of dough now? On the do they have a surface for? Do they have a surface for autographs and stuff?
Yeah. I hope no one has them though. But then so I would go to conventions like Chicago Comic Con, and I would just meet all the other dudes that were like me. So I met like a lot of people that went on to be big names. I met when they were like, I met Robert Kirkman when he was a kid with a photocopied wrestling comic. So, but yeah, so I met this guy Josh Blaylock who wanted to do comics as well and was in Chicago, and so we started talking about doing stuff, and it was a weird time in comics. Like the comics were at their lowest point, basically. Like they were like dying. The comics were just dead. So no one cared, so everything was kind of a crapshoot. But he got the rights to do G.I. Joe because Hasbro was like, I don't know, nobody likes G.I. Joe now, screw it. So they gave it to him for a song, basically. So he all of a sudden was like, oh my god, I'm publishing G.I. Joe, what the hell am I doing? So I moved from Minneapolis to Chicago to help him out because I had worked as an intern at Marvel. So I had a rough idea how to schedule things. So I came down to be an editor, and then so I worked as that, and I ended up drawing G.I. Joe because Hasbro was had requirements about you can never see a gun pointed at someone's face, or they get weird stuff like the Baroness, you can never see Baroness's underwear. I don't know, weird stuff like that. So I would spend so much time correcting art. They were just like, why don't you just draw it? Because then we don't have to worry about it, Because I could call them anytime and be like, can I show this? And I drew G.I. Joe for like 2 years, and it drove me nuts because it was so it's a kid's toy line, so I have to draw all these vehicles and I have to draw them just like the toys and stuff. And it was fun, but I was also like, God, I gotta do something else. So I made up Hackslash to give myself something else to do. And I try to do something as far from G.I. Joe as possible. So that's why Hackslash has got blood and gore and boobs and, it's sleazy and all that stuff. I was like, yes, it's the anti-G.I. Joe. So that, but that ended up working out weirdly well, and that gave me a chance to be a writer too. So is that the long story about how I got into comics? Yes, that is the long story. But yeah, so I don't have any training in writing. I took some college courses like everybody else did, but I think when I was a kid, when I was making up comics, what I thought was enjoyment in writing and drawing was actually enjoyment in writing. Because now I realize as a kid, I was like, I don't give a shit what the muscles of an arm is supposed to be. I don't care. Like I draw because I like to make comics. I never draw for like enjoyment for myself. Like, and I never, if someone wanted me to do an illustration for like the cover of an alternative newspaper or whatever, and was like, here's this illustration, I'd be like, ugh. Is there a story? Does it have monsters? I just don't care. I just don't draw for drawing's sake. I draw for comic's sake. So, but yeah. So I think maybe sort of there was always an interest in the writing part of it. But writing comics is a very different job than writing screenplays or novels, or because you think visually mostly, and you're also not sort of. I'm not that great with words, as you probably noticed while I speak, but I'm pretty good at characters and action scenes and plots and stuff like that. Because you can tell when he talks, he's a writer. That's a writer, right? He talks very knows references to Madame Bovary and stuff. Whereas that's not how I work. But yeah. So I think the pacing in comics was always in my head, especially like the unit of an issue. I think was always sort of something I understood. Probably more so than I understand most other things.
Well, it is, as we've learned thanks to people like Scott McCloud, it is a language, a way of thinking, a vocabulary where you have to really, those precepts have to kind of sink in until they become instinctive in a way. You were making me think of the Robert Crumb movie, where he talked about how he and his brother were always drawing comics as kids, and that kind of, primary school immersion and indulgence in the medium, it kind of sinks in and
But none of my brothers or I turned out as weird as the Crumb.
No, that's the Crumb about this.
I've never eaten tape to poop it out. That's never happened, so doing much better than Robert Crumb. Any other questions, you guys?
Yep.
Do you believe that there will ever be another Robin?
Do I believe there will be another Robin? Yeah. I think there's another one coming up pretty quick. Well, have you read that book, We Are Robin? There's like 12 Robins. But
well, Damian Wayne is still kind of functioning as Robin.
Yeah.
He's still kind of.
But I think that's the cool. Maybe that's the cool thing about the idea of most DC superheroes is that they're sort of legacy based. Even though I don't think they love that idea anymore. But someone always can take up the role, and as times change, it's cool. I was a kid when Jason Todd came out, and the fact that there was like a snotty Robin was kind of cool, Damian Wayne is the much better snotty Robin, I think, now, but yeah, I think there's always room, and I think, especially now, now would be a great opportunity. You can make not just a white dude Robin, so there, the We Are Robin has an Asian girl and a black guy, and, you can diversify it a little bit. So
obviously Frank Miller had pioneered that with the Dark Knight, with the female Robin, so different.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of the cool superheroes. It's 75 years worth of stuff. It's insane when you think about it.
I saw a cosplayer here at the convention who I didn't know the allusion, but she was Zombie Robin. She was in a Robin suit, but with all zombie horrific makeup on. So I don't know, maybe she was Jason Todd before he got revived or something. I don't know what the exact. I'm not sure what the exact allusion was with that, but yes, Zombie Robin. So
when I called in as a kid, they had a call-in. You could call to save or kill Robin. I called in to save him because I thought that was screwed up. But I lost. So, but now I'm writing him, so that's weird. I guess
You saved him.
I saved him. Yeah.
I just bought and read, you know, the DC archive volumes, the big fat hardcovers that reprint the really old stuff. So I read Robin Volume 1, and those stories were all over the map. There was one where Robin entered the juvenile reform school for boys undercover, and he had to pretend to be a tough little street urchin or whatever.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of room to play with the Robin figure.
Yeah, and for me, getting to write Grayson, there's a weird circular thing for that, because when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Spider-Man, you know. So for Christmas, my mom bought me the Mego used to make these like little figures that would come with vehicles. So my mom bought me the Spider-Mobile, which had like a net on and stuff. But they sent it to me with Dick Grayson in it. So I didn't get Spider-Man. It was like they screwed up, you know, whatever. So as a kid, I just like, who's this guy? And then I came to know about Batman and Robin. But now I think it's funny because I write him in the institution Spiral, and their symbol's a web. So I've got, when I was a kid, I had him driving around in the Spider-Mobile with it through a web. Like that was the joke of it, or the action feature on that, whatever. But yeah, and also it came with Dick Grayson and it came with the Hulk. So I had them driving around together. So it's weird. Yeah. Any other questions?
Let me just ask quick, because you brought up the merging of the two great continuities of comic book history. So did you grow up as a Marvel kid or a DC kid? Did you have a preference as a kid?
Yeah, I was a Marvel kid, but I also read Superman and Batman. So like, I have a missing spot when I was like, before I was like 13, I never read Flash or Green Lantern or any of that stuff. I've read Batman and Superman, but like, I read, at one point or another, I've read every Marvel title that has ever existed when I was a kid. I collected, you know, Spider-Man and Thor, and like the Avengers stuff was my favorite as a kid. And then when I turned into a teenager, when Jim Lee started drawing X-Men, and then it was kind of sexy, I was like 13, of course that was my favorite stuff. So it's like Rogue in a bikini, I'm in. But I was always sort of a, you know, Marvel kid, I think.
Were there other questions?
15
minutes. A 15-minute one.
That's a lovely sign, by the way.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, I'll tell my story, which will simultaneously show my incredible antique age here, but possibly amuse people as well. So, first grade, I'm in first grade, and comics are 10 cents. Imagine that. That's an ancient time. So my best friend and I, you know, comics fanatics, and all of a sudden comics go up to 12 cents, and we are totally bummed because, you know, we have like $1 a week allowance or 50 cents a week or whatever. So we devise a plan. He's going to buy all the Marvel titles and I'll buy all the DC titles, and we'll just swap back and forth. So we put this plan into effect, and now down in my basement I have like Superman 250 or Jimmy Olsen 39 or whatever, and they're worth like $50 a piece or whatever. But my friend, who I haven't seen in like 40 years, he now somewhere has like Fantastic Four #1 and Amazing Fantasy 15, and it was all because of that split. It was because I was the DC guy and he was the Marvel guy, and that's how we divided our purchasing power. So I've got all those Silver Age DCs, and meanwhile he's got all the Marvel #1s if he ever kept them.
When we were kids, so I have two brothers, and we didn't have a comic book store until I was like 11. We finally got one.
Oh, we bought them in the drugstore.
Yeah,
I mean, that was
we didn't have. Yeah, we had drugstore and stuff. But we would always do. There was a comic book store like 2 hours away in Green Bay, and so and it also had a Red Lobster, and my parents loved Red Lobster. So and we didn't have one in Wausau. So every couple months, they would drive us to Green Bay, and they would go to Red Lobster, and they would give us each $10 and drop us off at the comic book store. So with $10, you could get I think comics were like $1.95 then. You could get either 5 new comics, or you could go to the dime bin and get 100. Oh. So we would always go to the dime bin and get 100 comics, because that would keep us busy for the next like 6 months, you know. But so my comic collection is all shit. Yeah. It's all the stuff that nobody wanted, but I loved it. So it was like, you know, Infinity Inc. and like all these things that no one cared about at the time. And then like weird indie comics, like I think that partially it sort of formed my brain, because I would buy like the weird sci-fi books that Aerosol Publishing was putting out, or Malibu, or like, I got Ninja Turtles when I was, when it first came out. I don't think I have number 1. I have like number 2 or 3. I think I got for a dime before it was, there was like a beat up cover or something. But like, just because we were trying to maximize our economy. That was the whole thing. We were just like trying to get as much crap as we could, So, but yeah, the dime bin, sort of the flipping through comics like this is like my favorite thing to this day. It's like still, like I don't do it enough, but when I get some time at a convention, just going through stuff, like, it's like my favorite. I love it. So, yeah.
Well, sometimes reading, the classics are the classics for a reason. They're great art, whether in comics or prose novels, whatever. But sometimes reading the pulpy, bottom of the barrel stuff can teach you things, in a way, and kind of, inspire you to, and maybe even entertain you to a different degree, or I won't say a large degree, but a different degree than reading some of the classics, the milestone comics do.
And that's kind of bring it back around, like, I hope there's kids out there right now, like, going through quarter bins or digging through stuff and finding a hack slash or something of mine and, like, having to hide it under their bed and stuff. I think that's awesome. That's,
Have you ever encountered that much anticipated or wished for thing when you're out in public anonymously and you see someone reading one of your books? Have you ever? Yeah. That doesn't happen.
Not because.
Or like even at a convention, even at a convention setting, you'll see somebody reading one of your books in the hall or whatever, and that must give you a nice feeling.
Then you totally want to be a douche and come on and be like, I wrote that. Like, you have to resist that urge.
Right. Nobody wants to hear from the author.
Yeah.
Well, statistically, even in the science fiction field, inveterate, heavy-duty readers, they often don't even remember author names, It's it's just like, well, I read this great fantasy series, okay, who wrote it? I don't know, but it had, dragons, this and that. Yeah, the author is kind of dispensable in a way, beyond the story.
That's one cool thing about comics is that you're really credited, Because I don't know why, but people always know. Because I'm not,
well, the hardcore fans do in science fiction, but there's a great realm, if fandom is like 10% of the readership, that other 90% who are out there and never go to a convention or something might be reading you, but not identifying so intensely with bylines.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Right.
This is certainly true.
It's humbling.
Yeah, it is. Anybody else have a question? You discuss anything? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between working for an Image, which is more creative?
For me, but doing something at an Image, like, I guess a good example is I did a book at Vertigo called Effigy, and it was creator-owned, but it had an editor. So she would call me and give me notes for like 2 hours on a book that I made up, and no one has ever given me a note on Revival because it was at Image. But I actually kind of liked the process. Like, there's something nice sometimes about working with an editor. Sometimes you don't want one, but when you have one, you're like, she and Shelley Bond, the editor, did make the book better. Like, all her ideas were on point. All the things that she wanted me to do were better for the story. So, but yeah, it kind of depends. Like, I think if I had only company books, I would get more upset when they asked me to change stuff. But like, if the editor says like, oh, you can't do this in GRAYSON, I'll just be like, yeah, well, I'll just do whatever the hell I want. Revival, I don't care.
It's like
it doesn't, it doesn't bother me.
It's like a pressure valve. It's like
I can do it.
Escape route or pressure valve that you've got this other creative route to.
Yeah, and it totally. So it makes me mellow. And I've got friends who they want, their big goal is to tell like their Spider-Man opus, And so if the editor changes something, they're like, oh, and they're really upset about it. I don't know Spider-Man. I'm fine with it. It's like I'll do my story, and if I do the best I can, and then if they have me change stuff, I just go, whatever, that's fine. Then I just go and smash all my Marvel stuff and like burn all my comics.
The Spider-Mobile
stomp on it.
The Spider-Mobile actually figured in continuity for a very brief time, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was,
they had to put it in there because they had a toy deal.
Oh, that was the reason why?
He crashed it right away because they were like, this is stupid, why would Spider-Man? So he literally, the first issue it appears, he crashes it. Totally true story. Marvel's like, screw you, we're not putting that stupid thing in there.
Well, that's kind of like in Star Trek where they have both the shuttles and the transporter beam, and I forget which came first. It was like they couldn't afford to build a shuttle mock-up, so they invented the
Oh, really?
transporter. And then when they got a little more budget, they had like plot things that needed a shuttle, and so they built the shuttle. I'm pretty sure that's
And
what
that's a better toy. It's a way better toy than the
right,
transporter, which is like
right.
kind of stupid. Any other questions before? I think we're almost, boys, we almost done?
Yeah.
All right.
So one more question, we should go, or none?
We
We got 6 minutes.
Okay, we're good. We have time for one more.
Yep.
What's the one character that you haven't worked with that you want to work with?
Very, very neat.
I don't know. I would love to do more with Superman. I got to do him. Superman is in the Dick Grayson annual that we just did, and I would like Superman is the original. So I'd love to do more Superman stuff, but all the other ones I want to do are like stupid characters that no one would ever buy a comic of, even though I love them too.
Mhm.
Like I would love to do something with Shade the Changing Man. I love that guy.
Yeah.
I'd love to do Darkhawk. I think that character is great. Tigra from Marvel. She-Hulk. If I could do She-Hulk, I'd punch anybody in the face to do She-Hulk. That's one of my favorite characters. So, yeah. Good. That's a good question. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
I release you to go shop in the world and go. Yeah.
Mr. Tim, how's your